I want to talk about Natalia Grace. I covered her series, The Curious Case of Natalia Grace, which was on HBO Max, and I covered a few other things on her in the past. Like, since the last documentary, The Curious Case of Natalia Grace, it kind of like made it seem like at the end, this is the end of everything. We're no longer documenting this journey, which was unfortunate because I wanted to see what was going on beyond that and see, like, okay, is she going to stay with the DePaul family? Is she going to stay with her boyfriend? I had so many questions. Well, she's been pretty quiet. She did a few interviews after that series came out, but she finally made a Facebook and she's verified on there. And this has been confirmed as her Facebook. And she's speaking out against the Mans family who was financially abused. She breaks down all the finances, exactly how much money she gave to the Mans family, and just how screwed over she feels by them in the long run. So let's go ahead and get into this. So let's check out this Facebook that she just dropped. So you're like, okay, how do we know this is Natalia though? She did drop a picture. She did post a picture to verify, and then Nicole DePaul, the woman that she was living with in the last series, she posted and confirmed that this is indeed Natalia. And I mean, she's verified. Picture where she's holding up a sign and it says, "Good morning, beautiful people. I wanted to come on here and let you all know this is my official page. I ask you kindly not to send private messages as I will not be responding for privacy reasons. This is the only show of proof that it is me, so please respectfully don't ask me to prove myself." And she shares, like, okay, this is Friday, September 12th. Okay, so she said, from Natalia Grace. Nicole shared what this profile Natalia is sharing that we're about to get into. And then when Natalia shared all these things, not only is she sharing these things trying to broaden the audience, but she is also asking people to forward the message. She said the Mans family have blocked me, so if anyone here still has contact with them, I appreciate you passing this along. Natalia's faith has nothing to do with them. Her walk with Jesus is her own, and Christ holds her hand every single day. She does not need Antoine or Cynthia. I've been told they gone on TikTok live praying that Natalia will come back to Jesus. The audacity. How dare they pretend to know anything about her private relationship with her creator? If you have access to Antoine or Cynthia, please share this message. Thank you. So now let's get into what Natalia is saying, which is the bread and butter here. Weeks ago, so she said, funny how some people tell you to repent and confess for your sins, but I haven't once heard you mention your sin. How about what you did to Cynthia and the things you did to us kids while drunk or just mad? And she's talking about Antoine. She said about how I always had to hide from social services so you guys could adopt those kids. How much did I get off the documentary and the Dr. Phil show and the GoFundMe that were in my name? How much do I have of it all? How much do you have of it all? Over $150,000 from everything. Who paid the tax for that? I'm responsible for paying over $20,000 in taxes for that money you have. Who had to pay back over $16,000 to their disability benefits because they had that? Who's losing $1,000 in Social Security a month? You say I gave you that money from the documentary and GoFundMe. Lies. It went to you because I didn't have the proper identification for the house to go in my name or anything that I was supposed to receive. But at the end of the day, it was still my money. Let's face it. What parents would accept $150,000 plus other child's money, leaving them penniless for their own future, especially when they're disabled and need surgeries and adaptations and equipment and support to have any sort of future, especially when childhood was spent in abuse and living alone. All I wanted was a nice future the way I wanted, not the way you wanted. I weren't even allowed to watch most cartoons just because it went against religious beliefs. Everyone deserves to live their life the way they want to, as long as it's not abusive or aggressive. I'd like to know how many people out there would want to live where they can't listen to music of their choice, watch any music of their choice, or watch listen to their music of choice, watch any movie of their choice, have their hair how they want it, dress how they want, message who they want, or go out where they want as an adult. Because after all this happened while I was an adult. How many of your other kids have left, the ones that are old enough, for practically the same reasons and did things you didn't agree with and were out of God's will? Okay, yeah, so she goes in these posts. So just warning you, we are going to be covering a lot. And Antoine did respond. We're going to get to his response, but he's like, I have raised generations of children. I am a good father. If I am so bad, then have I raised generations of children and nobody else has complained? But Natalia here is claiming that there have been other ones who left once they were finally old enough to do so. She said, where's your post asking them to repent and confess to the world? They haven't even been disowned the way I have. Antoine, you were violent and mentally and physically abusive, and all the kids and Cynthia are afraid to go against whatever you say, even though you will have them deny because they will, because what you say goes. As soon as I left, within months of being with the DePauls, any money I had, I got, and I was in control of. I had my ID within 5 months. Yet you claimed I couldn't ever get it. I got my driver's license and freedom. Funny you said all this bad stuff about me, yet you had me looking after vulnerable children every day, teaching them school stuff, cleaning after them, playing with them, looking after them when they're sick. I'd wake up early and get them ready for school, and every other aspect of taking care of kids. So I've been told in therapy that for someone who's experienced so much trauma as a child, and I've actually turned out pretty well. And she's like, you just want a continuous battle, but you just want it because you're going to be able to continuously make money off of it. Since he can't make money off her living with him, he's going to make money off talking about her through social media. Hey, my beautiful people. I want to come on here and explain what truly happened with the Mans. From the beginning, it's as simple as when I was talking to someone, they found out, they confiscated my phone, and they forced me to do an interview I didn't want to do. And I'm sure everybody could tell how uncomfortable she looked in that interview, and it just was clear to me like how brainwashed she was. She was just like saying everything that you could tell the Mans family would want her to say. It's like they're literally her puppet master in that moment. And she said, they found out, they confiscated my phone, they forced me to do an interview I didn't want to do. They threatened me with divine punishments, and they made me so scared that I sought help. I was allowed to have my phone a little bit while I was at the interview, but once we left, I had to give it back to Cynthia. This isn't the first time I had my phone taken and searched, though. This was a regular occurrence, and one time when I was 18, I had it taken away for almost a year. Can you see here the hidden mask? On camera, she let me have my phone next to me, but once we left, I had to give it back. They forced me to do the interview to make Neil look bad. So Cynthia was trying to make it look like, oh, we're not controlling her. She has a way to at least contact people from the outside if she was to need help. But it sounds like she was cutting that off as soon as the cameras left. I was only allowed to have my phone and make calls to SSI or anything like that, but it had to be while they're next to me. I was also allowed to use my Spanish app again, but only while they're next to me. Apart from that, I wasn't allowed on my phone, even though they had it set with parental controls, so anything I tried to download or do went straight to Cynthia's phone. There's even a time when Antoine kept saying I was being sneaky on my phone when all I was doing was being on hold with SSI, so he took my phone until I got off hold. Antoine told me the reason I wasn't allowed to move out when I made a comment about living in my own place. Before they found out I was talking to someone, he said he didn't think I'd be okay spiritually and that would be out of the will of God if I left. After that conversation, he started becoming suspicious that I was speaking to someone, and he had Cynthia take my phone when she got back to the house because they saw messages from Neil saying, are you okay? And I wasn't replying, and that's when they hit the roof. Once they knew about Neil, they took everything. They cut me off from not just Neil, but everyone, including the DePauls, who were trying to ask them if I was okay, and they needed to speak to me about something important. They wouldn't let Nick speak to me, and because they couldn't talk to me, they told the mans the information instead about me needing the operation and that if I didn't have it, I could become paralyzed. They told Nick they would just pray for me, and they never told me what she said, which was withholding important medical information that I needed to know as it was vital for my health that affects me, not them. I should have the option to choose to be prayed for to cure me or to have the surgery. I agree with that. That's effed up to just be like, oh, we're just going to pray your leg gets better. It's like, I promise you, if one of them ended up getting cancer, they would go to the hospital. They wouldn't just pray for the cancer to go away. Technically, I could have the surgery and been prayed for, that it would be successful. So after the info got out that I was speaking to someone online, and after they took everything, Antoine called me to the living room and started drilling me with questions, asking me what I told Neil, and he pretty much manipulated Natalia by saying, oh, I'm pretty much God, so God, he pretty much manipulated Natalia like, me and God are tight like that, so he's going to tell me what you did anyways, so you might as well fess up now. So Natalia ended up admitting, yeah, I told him about what's going on with the finances, and Antoine got mad. He started yelling. He called her a liar, and he said he had receipts for everything, including the $30,000 that she got from Dr. Phil. And I guess the man's family, they were actually the ones that were paid by the Dr. Phil family, or not the Dr. Phil family. The man's family, they were the ones paid by the Dr. Phil show, not Natalia. So they gave the check to the man's family, and the man's family said, oh yeah, the Dr. Phil show just gave us $3,000. She later found out it was $30,000, not $3,000. She said the receipts from the Dr. Phil show showed just that it was paid to the church as a donation. But that doesn't prove anything other than what I'm saying is true. And the fact that it was paid as a donation sounds like it was likely not taxable. And she says, you had it sent to the church so I wouldn't lose my SSI, which I never got because, again, you had control of it. And so that it didn't get taxed because it's a nonprofit church and the church is in your name, Antoine. You spent it all on stuff for yourself, but disguised it as stuff for the church. Examples like your expensive Alessis drum set, expensive camera equipment, paying a year in advance rent for the church building, and anything else you saw fit since you were in control of the church finances. Even some stuff was bought for the church initially. When the lease for the building finished, you took all the camera equipment, instruments, and speakers home, and you started using it to make your videos. If the $30,000 donation was to the church, how were you able to take the stuff home if it was church property? The ins and outs are that out of the $30K, which was bought from it, is now in your possession, not mine, not the church's, yours. That's just another way you ended up benefiting from my appearance on a show. The camera equipment and stuff you're using to make your YouTube videos, for example. That GoFundMe money was in my name, roughly $25,000. It was asking for funds for a dream vacation to Israel for the family, a wheelchair accessible van for the family, and for me to get in and out with ease, and just for support in general. I felt I had to agree with Israel because I always felt like I had to agree with anything Antoine said, because I have proof that when people message me privately asking me okay, so they start so it's a man's family's idea to try to raise money for this vacation in Israel, and it sounded like it's because they wanted to go there. And Natalia said, I have proof that people have messaged me in the past asking me where my dream vacation would be, and I always said Paris. Long story short, I left before the trip or the van ever happened, since it was no longer being used for exactly what was said, and we couldn't differentiate. Why can't I say that? Since we couldn't differentiate whether people donated because of my documentary or for the family, I told Cynthia the fair thing to do would be to refund the donors. I'm sure majority of the people were donating strictly for Natalia. She refused because the money was already spent. The documentary money for the curious case in Natalia Grace was also mishandled. You always told me the payment was for all of us, but I later found out that the lump sum, $102,000, was mine, while you were each paid appearance funds of $1,000, which led to a total of $104,000. I was told this officially after I left the man's by the network, the people who paid. They specifically told me $102,000 was what they were paying me personally, and $1,000 each was what they paid you. You asked for mine and your payments to be sent together in one payment. You talk about lying, yet you had the audacity to deny that the $102,000 was mine and the $1,000 each was yours. Even when the network told me directly, you still deny it. What you're doing is manipulating the wording. You had it paid in one payment at your request, combining it so your money was included with mine. By doing so, you twist the wording saying it was combined as if that was meant for everyone. But you're not mentioning that out of the combined amount, $102,000 of it was mine. It's not combined in the sense that it's equal shares. You just requested they pay you $2,000 with my $102K. But again, you're trying to manipulate it. Damn. How it was in your name, Cynthia, because I didn't have an ID, but I was the beneficiary. You took it out as cash and you spent the majority of it buying the house you currently live in. I agreed for it to go towards the house originally because I was living there, and it still meant I owned it because my money was used for it. But again, I didn't have ID. You put it in your name. I trusted you all that it was safe to put my money into the property, but that it had to be in your name as there's no other way at that time. I trusted that it didn't mean I owned none of it. I believed it was just something that had to happen because of the situation with my ID, but I still own the amount equivalent to what I was paid. When I left, I didn't know all the figures and what was actually paid to me, as you always just said we were all paid equally. So when I asked for my money, you said no, it was gone on the house and that it was your house. That is crazy work. In the end, not taking into account the Dr. Phil payment and you tell me that I was actually paid for my doc, making me believe that we were all paid the same, and you saying the GoFundMe was everybody's, I said about you paying me $25,000. We made an agreement for you to pay me $1,000 a month for the $25,000, which, by the way, you didn't stick to fully, and you stopped paying before blocking me. But this agreement was made under false pretenses, so as you withheld the most important information about how much money was actually mine. Since leaving, I found out the exact figures of everything that was legally paid to me. You conned me. The agreement was made on false information because you lied about how much was mine and claimed I had no ownership of the house because it is in your name. But as stated above, I trusted you to put it in your name only because I couldn't due to lack of ID, while still believing I owned what I paid into. When you look into financial abuse, this is a perfect example of a tactic. You convinced me that it was a good idea, you made me trust you, and then you used it to take everything away from me. Before you go online that I didn't get $102,000 and that it was yours too, and even stating that the network lied to me about how much was mine, I guess you also know the answer to this. If it wasn't all my money, why is the tax bill for it in my name? And why has SSI charged me $16,000 for receiving it in my name? And why did my SSI stop and not yours? Once I left, you admitted to me that you made mistakes, pretending that you were happy for me, figuring out my life, going on social media, pretending everything was okay. And I've since realized it was all part of your plan. You manipulated me by pretending that you still loved me, sending me messages just to keep me under control. And I guess Natalia was offered a TLC show, and I guess, what was her name? Cynthia Mans talked her out of it. She said, don't do the TLC show. She told me I needed to stop letting the network control me. And she said the kids were bullied in school and that you just wanted peace. I tried to keep the peace and did my best not to speak about life in that house. But Antoine was mad because he said I committed the biggest betrayal in mankind when I left. He said I let people brainwash me into thinking that you're bad people, yet you create the situation by making that call. The call extended the contract that would have otherwise ended it, meaning I had to tell the truth and explain what led up to it. Even then, I still try to keep your secrets. While that part of the doc was being filmed at the DePauls, you continued sending me pics of the kids and saying you were my mama and best friend. You saw I was staying off social media, wanting a peaceful life, finally free of my past, and you thought I wouldn't say anything else and waited until the NDA was nearly up. As soon as you're confident I wouldn't speak further, you turned on me, sending a message bringing everything back up from nearly 2 years ago for no reason. There had to be a motive. If not, you would have blocked me a long time ago and said keep me close until the moment it suited you. She says it all makes sense now. You're keeping me sweet so I wouldn't say anything during the documentary. You don't want me to say anything during the doc. That's why you're being nice. Don't say you're not being paid. Everyone knows TikTok and YouTube bring money. So now not only do you refuse to give me the money I was paid to put my life and my childhood out there, but you also think it's acceptable for me to have no money while you keep all the items, house, and cash. On top of that, you think I should pay the $20,000 in taxes, lose my SSI, pay $16,000 back to SSI, and lose my monthly $1,000 in SSI altogether. So I'm left in massive debt because of the documentary while you live in a house full of possessions bought with my money, still chasing fame. Tell me how that makes sense. And she doesn't get her SSI check anymore. Man, thank God she has the DePaul family. She'd probably really be in a pickle right now. Oh, God. I mean, she'd just be stuck in the man's control. I don't want to, there's a lot, so I'm just going to skip around. After the interview with Michael on the way home, you told me you were proud of me, but the very next day you turned on me, accusing me of letting him cuss and not backing you up when you went outside. You attacked me for talking about my birth mother on camera, saying that by doing that, I gave her a chance to get paid to be in the documentary. You manipulated me into disliking her. When I first spoke to her, she asked if I'd return to her once I turned 18, and she didn't acknowledge the care you and Cynthia gave me, so you twisted that into her manipulating me. On camera, you pretend to pray for her, but off camera, you grilled me, telling me I'd given her a chance to gain something. She said she couldn't watch what she wanted. If anything had more than 3 cuss words, even if there were substitute words, he turned it off. Even when she was an adult, she wasn't allowed to watch cartoons with gay characters because he said it was an abomination. She had to wear long skirts. She wasn't allowed to cut her hair even when she had dead ends. And she wasn't allowed to wear makeup, jewelry, piercings, or tattoos. And she couldn't even wear a hair tie on her wrist or a watch. Sometimes they let her get away with a Fitbit, but that's it. She says, as for physical abuse, you used a belt, you dragged me by my hair, you threatened to put my hand in hot oil, and you kicked me, punched me, and almost threw me across the room in a chair. Can you swear on a Bible that you didn't do these things? Can you swear you didn't cheat on Cynthia, that you weren't an abusive alcoholic, that you didn't do drugs? How dare you threaten me with divine punishment for simply being a grown woman? Most adult women don't get their phone searched constantly on parental controls or get grounded at age 20. I was basically a cash cow in that house doing TikToks and Facebook Lives and Amazon wish lists and GoFundMes and using my SSI. Can you point out something that I've gotten from all that? Everything has been from your benefit, not mine. Even the Amazon wish list. When I had that stuff on it, you would put ridiculously expensive things on there, like cameras and even the Amazon wish list. When I had that stuff on it, you'd put ridiculously expensive things on there, like cameras and vouchers and things in the thousands. All that would benefit you and your vision. Oh, and by the way, the phone you stole from me and never gave back was sent to me on my 20th birthday by a supporter. So whoever bought me that phone, if you're reading this, they stole it from me after legally going through it. You can tell me by the wish list what was for Antoine, what was for Cynthia, and what was for me. I got the backlash from the public about the expensive things that they put on the list. The only things you gave me back when I left were my computer, my books, and my clothes, which were sent to me by supporters except the computer. So everything else that was donated to me or sent from the wish list or money that was sent remained with the mans, further pointing that everything is about their financial benefit. Think of it, the documentary, the expensive wish list, the lives, the Dr. Phil appearance, the GoFundMes, all the wish list, all the adopted disabled kids that receive SSI, the series coming up, they all have one thing in common: money. That's all you care about. She said, you think you're the only one with evidence, Antoine, but I have files full. I'm prepared to do this legally in the eyes of the law instead of your judgments about what's right and wrong. Let's not forget, before I came, how poor y'all were. And because of my past, how wealthy you are now. Your income is for me and the kids' SSI. One day people won't care about my story anymore, and your use of it to make money will dry up, and you'll need to get a job for your money, especially when the kids are grown and you'll no longer get their disability. She said, since I came and was receiving adult rate SSI since I was 8, 9, how much of my adult rate payments have you put away for my future? I surely don't cost $1,000 a month to feed, especially eating what we ate. We didn't go on vacations. We didn't go to theme parks or anything that cost a lot of money. My clothes were mainly secondhand or from donors. There was no reason why you shouldn't have saved my own money or part of it for my future, but I guess you didn't because you never planned for me to leave. She said, during the argument between me and Neil, I was told that I had told Antoine that he'd send me sexual messages because Antoine kept grilling me, saying there had to be something sexual going on for me to be upset for so long over somebody, and that God was going to tell him anyways. Neil was upset, saying it's funny how I said things, but didn't mention what he had said, and then he said maybe I should tell them about the sexual messages you sent. He straight away said he wouldn't do that anyways, but for a moment, I felt like I couldn't go back because if he tells them, things could get worse. And just to elaborate, when I say sexual messages, I mean inappropriately flirtatious things, some funny but crude memes, and the odd gift, but I know by the man's standards, they would classify anything small as sexual and a sin, and I would be in trouble. So for a moment, I thought he was going to tell them if I went back, but when I asked him if he was blackmailing me, he said that's not what he meant, and you know full well I'd never actually do that. And she just said, like, going to the DePaul's was a complete shock because she got to see what a normal environment is like outside of being constantly controlled 24/7. She said, I had a hairdresser. I had an appointment with a top surgeon in Florida who specialized in my condition. Nick told me things I didn't know about the future with my condition. I got my driver's license. I got my ID in 5 months. I went on vacation. I went out and I did normal things like shopping, and I went to school for my GED. Even though they did all this for me, I didn't exactly make life easy for them because the mans had set off another season of the documentary, and talking about the trauma over and over again became too much to handle. I guess that made me probably not the best person to live with. I was emotional, stubborn, I had anxiety attacks, and I put a lot on them. When I moved in with you, Antoine and Cynthia, I was 8, almost 9. I'd come from the Barnetts and lived alone for 2 years. I had nothing to compare to what happened in your house until now, and I get to see how other people live. And she says, I feel like maybe I wasn't mature enough to sign for a TV show where it was filled with me reliving all my childhood trauma and experiences. She said, I'm sorry, but if you think it's okay for me to agree with your decision to do the documentary, don't treat me like a child and come up with excuses for why you had to control me and my money. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. What reason am I no longer allowed to contact with the kids? So she's no longer allowed to talk to any of their other children, it sounds like. At the end of the day, I did nothing wrong that you'd come after for me or justify this behavior. All you can do is come after the people I care about as part of your revenge. Don't worry, they're sitting on the sidelines waiting to take legal action. You say you have receipts, but we have actual general evidence of everything from the very beginning. This is all a game to you, Antoine, hence your threats and comments like checkmate. It's pretty sad, to be honest. Then she said, please stop posting underhanded big posts towards me. We already know who you're talking about, so just speak plainly or don't say anything at all. And she says, I'm not going to keep doing this where you come online with your lies and excuses and calling me a liar, but I'll reply to your comment about if you beat me, it would show on scans. What about when I told Cynthia's mom about the what was going on, and you got mad because I told her you lying and denying is proving you're a fake and are not practicing what you preach. Your comment of what happens in the house stays in the house. I should have seen it was a red flag. I'm not saying you're beating me to death on the daily or breaking my bones. I'm saying you'd use the belt sometimes, and you have punched and kicked me, and you have dragged me by the hair. These things happened even though it wasn't a daily occurrence. It was only when you really got mad or drunk. The actual majority of abuse was mental and verbal, financial, spiritual, etc. It happened, and that's the truth. Antoine, the other kids in that house had the belt themselves. I can't say I've seen you punch them, but definitely the belt. So I'd love for the kids to go somewhere safe and told they're safe to answer questions without repercussions and ask them if they've seen it or experienced it. And that's the thing, like they really need someone to take them to the side and talk to them, where you're not going to have Antoine or Cynthia like coaching them beforehand. So this is their TikTok. And he says, the Bible says, it really makes me angry on how many supposed family members and old people from our past are okay and supporting what Natalia is doing. It's crazy to me that she's out here trying to make my family look Psalm 46, so bad. Verse 10, she makes it seem like we had such a terrible childhood. Okay, so this is Antoine. And he says he's going to start a series. Okay, well, he's got this music going in the background, and it's probably going to get me copyright claims. So pretty much he just said, like, I've raised generations of kids. Nobody else has complained. So she's putting these allegations that I've been physical with her and the other kids. But if that was the case, the other kids would have left by now. Kind of what I was mentioning earlier. Then he's like, and also if I was putting hands on her, then when she went and got scans or went to the doctor, which it sounded like they weren't taking her to the doctor that much, that they weren't willing to take her to see a surgeon. But he said, oh, they would have seen that when they're doing scans. But I feel like that's a form of gaslighting, because just because somebody may not have like a physical injury that a scan or x-ray is going to pick up, that does not mean that they weren't abused. Somebody could have got a black eye that could have went away. Somebody could have got a bloody nose. There's plenty of things that could have happened that won't show up in a scan. Especially, it could have happened months before. Just like when she said dragging your hair, that's not going to show up in a scan.
And I felt this in my spirit.
And pretty much he just said he's going to start addressing everything from the financial aspect and all that. He still claims that a lot of the money, like in the house and what they have, is stuff that's his, came out of his own pocket. So he says he's going to start a mini-series. If you guys want me to cover some of his mini-series and this drama, let me know. There's still other posts on Natalia's Facebook that I haven't even had a chance to get to, so let me know if you're interested in seeing more of that. But I just wanted to talk about this because I did have some of you guys reach out after the Curious Case of Natalia Grace documentary series I covered, and you guys were asking for updates on the situation, and this is the latest. We finally got an update. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.